All right, welcome everyone to Gathering of the Green Teams, Session 1 on Green Team Fundamentals. I am Becky Feldman-Edwards from USGBCLA, and we are so happy you could all join us today. This is the 8th annual Gathering of the Green Teams, but it is the first time it has ever been part of the Municipal Green Building Conference that we affectionately call MGBCE, which is in its 19th year now, and both events taking place for the very first time fully virtual. So thank you all so much for joining us. We are really excited to establish this partnership and to bring both of these green events under one roof. The work that Gathering of the Green Teams is doing is really important. So we're so happy to have all of you, and especially our utility partners who have been running this event all those 8 years, here with us. And when we talk about green teams, whether it is a small volunteer force working on removing single-use plastics from the workspace, or a larger employee-run group that's working on data collection or climate planning, green teams are a super important part of supporting and increasing corporate sustainability. So we're really glad that we have this awesome group here today to talk about this. Just a little logistics for you. If you can please use the chat box located in the Whova platform, I will be monitoring that for any questions that we have for our panelists, which we will save until the end. There are also a second session of Gathering of the Green Teams after this. You will need to exit this session, go to the agenda, and then click on session 2 to log in there. So we hope to see you in that one. And without further ado, I would love to introduce our fabulous moderator, Ryan Jackson, who is the environmental specialist at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Ryan recently joined the LADWP corporate sustainability team. He coordinates their green team, zero waste planning and compliance reporting, as well as climate accounting. He previously led stormwater compliance for the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission and administered waste reduction programs at the San Francisco Department of the Environment. Ryan holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Society and Environment from UC Berkeley and a Master of Public Administration degree in Environmental Science Policy from Columbia University. Ryan, thanks so much, and I'm going to toss it to you.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate the intro. We are so very pleased to be hosting the Gathering of the Green Teams as part of the MGBC as well. It's a really good pairing. And for this session, I'm really happy to be moderating here and participating in my first Gathering of the Green Teams event. We're joined by sustainability leaders who are going to share how their green teams are bettering their organizations. It's a very diverse group. We all work in different environments, and I think that this content-rich panel is really going to be helpful to folks whether you have a green team or are thinking about developing a green team. We've got voices from the private sector, investor-owned utilities, publicly owned utilities, and educational institutions. And there's quite a lot of content, so I'm going to jump right in, but just give you just one more bit of background information about our session. We're calling our session Green Team Fundamentals because we want to offer background information on the variety of approaches that we have developed for structuring green teams and managing green teams, and really having those green teams drive sustainability at our organizations. There's also a co-benefit in all of our cases, for employee engagement. So we hope to address employee engagement as well. So without further ado, I'm going to upload our slides. Just give me one moment to share that screen and introduce some of our panelists. Becky, do I have a full screen slide on your end?
You sure do. It looks great.
Okay, thank you. So the way that we'll structure the information sharing today is each of our panelists will do a 5-minute presentation on the background of their green team and how it came to be. After we finish kind of the slide marathon, we'll get into a bunch of discussion questions and take questions from the Whova platform as well. So please hold on to your questions if you have them, and we can address those all at the end of the slide sharing. Our first presenter is John Walker with Lyft. John manages sustainability policy for Lyft, including environmental and electric vehicle programs. Externally, John works with public officials, the private sector, NGOs, and utilities to advance mutual environmental and electric vehicle goals. Internally, John works with Lyft's operations and product teams to help design, deploy, and scale Lyft's new electric vehicle program. So John, without further ado, I'm going to bring your slides up. Just let me know how to advance them or if I need to move backward or whatever works.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. And thanks for having me on the panel. It's my first Green Buildings Conference, and I'm happy to give maybe a slightly different perspective from the private sector and from a company that has the majority of its carbon footprint well outside of its walls. And so we think about both. So we actually have two facets at Lyft to our, what we would call a green team or our green initiatives. One, we have a fully dedicated sustainability team. And I was one of the original members of that. And it was started 2 years ago in 2018. Myself, coming from a nonprofit energy environment think tank background, and then another, my director, Sam Aarons, who came from leading Google's clean energy procurement group. So we started Lyft's sustainability team, and the way it works now is we have 5 members on sustainability, but we also have an employee resource group, which I think may be similar to what other folks have. And we have many employee resources groups for people of color, for parents, for hobbyists of different things. And then we have one for environmental and sustainability. And so we get about 50 people attending those meetings. And we have those meetings bi-weekly, but the 3 of us that are on the sustainability team are full-time. And then we have two contract fellows who bring us up to 5 full-time working on sustainability. Next slide, please, Ryan. So it's a fairly flat organization, which I really like. So John Zimmer is our president, former transportation secretary. Anthony Fox reports directly to John Zimmer. And then we sit, and Anthony Fox runs the policy group, and we sit on the policy group. There's my director, Sam Aarons, and then he manages all of sustainability. I manage electric vehicles and vehicle programs, which I'll talk a tiny bit about. And then my colleague, Paul Augustine, manages other sustainability initiatives like buildings, food waste, repositioning of bikes and scooters, et cetera. So next slide, please. We are governed by a newly formed steering committee. So in one sense, we're governed by public policy. And so the things that we do on our team, they cannot just be green. I used to be a energy and environment NGO, and obviously the whole point was to do things that are green and good for the environment. At a publicly traded company, you need to, you still need to satisfy the almighty dollar. And that can be through using electric vehicle programs to create partnerships. And what we're really excited about is using them to reduce operating costs, because electric vehicles are much lower operating costs. But we have an executive from operations, an executive from policy, an executive from legal, and an executive from comms. And we meet quarterly to talk about the general direction of the team and the ERG. And I'll talk a little bit about what we've got going on there. So next slide, please. So our objectives, and you had, I think the template was key results, but we call them OKR, so objectives and key results. Our biggest one we just announced, maybe some of you heard it, we are going to 100% electric vehicles by 2030. So we do rent facilities and we do have staff, and so we do generate carbon and emissions and food waste in other ways, but the vast majority of our carbon footprint is from our vehicles giving rides, which is not surprising. And so we put a pretty bold stake in the ground saying we're going to get to 100% electric vehicle by 2030. We've started in Denver, Atlanta, and Seattle with fleets of electric vehicles through our partner rental companies. And we're very interested in bringing that to California, recent drama notwithstanding. So that's really exciting, and that's the majority of our carbon footprint, and that's what I lead. And then we also do have a carbon neutral operations that Paul Augustine leads as well, where we want all of our operations to be net zero or net negative, and that's done through renewable energy credits, power purchase agreements, and also through places that have community choice, procuring green energy through community choice. And we rent. We don't actually own any buildings. And so we have a requirement of a certain level of energy efficiency from the buildings we rent. And then we also have folks that are on the ERG that are working on all kinds of stuff like reducing food waste. They created a recycling program. where food that wasn't used was given to a food bank, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty much across the board. And then next slide, I think that might be it actually. Yep, so that's all I have. So like the short format, and looking forward to answering questions and having a discussion.
Thank you, John. So impressive, that 100% EV goal. Thank you for sharing the details on that. Next up, we've got another company with aggressive sustainability goals, Kilroy Realty. And we're really lucky to have Jasmine Lomax with us today from Kilroy. So Jasmine, please let me know when to advance your slides.
I don't even see them yet. There they are. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So as Ryan said, I'm Jasmine. I'm with Kilroy Realty. And our sustainability program was established in 2010 by the marvelous and notable Ms. Sarah Neff. And then there's two more of us on that sustainability team, myself and then my colleague, Vaishali. And then we also have a corporate social responsibility board. So there's about 7 of us total that are really heading up a lot of these sustainability initiatives at Kilroy. And we do meet regularly. Next. So our sustainability strategy is sort of, as you can see from these, this infographic, we start by doing a market assessment, whether it's benchmarking or just analyzing what the next step is as far as our ESG goals and our best practices to implement on our properties. And then we come up with an action plan. How are we going to implement these strategies or programs, projects to maximize our sustainability and minimize our impact on the environment? And then of course we implement those. And then afterwards we'll do analysis and see how everything comes out at the end and how we can improve for next time and roll it over to other properties. So this infographic here is a demonstration of how deeply intertwined our sustainability team is across KRC. It falls into every department that you see: operations, development, legal team, marketing, all of that. So it's very important to us. And as developers, we understand that we have one of the largest impacts on the environment, period, through obviously new development and then also just operation maintenance of running our existing buildings has a large carbon footprint. So yes, next slide. So through all these programs and initiatives, Kilroy has been able to accomplish a lot of amazing feats in terms of sustainability. These are some from last year, noting our key performance indicators, so water reduction, energy reduction. We track our greenhouse gas emissions, building certifications, waste diversion, and then for the end of 2020, our commitments, one of our biggest commitments was to be carbon neutral by the end of this year, starting January of next year, and also tracking our scope 3 emissions in our new development projects using the embodied carbon tool, which we're currently working on, and we're excited to see the results of that as well. That's it for me. Also loving the short format and looking forward to interacting afterwards.
Thank you, Jasmine. And I have to apologize because I skipped right into your slides without doing your bio. And it's
That's totally fine. That's just embarrassing.
Oh, no, we're about to embarrass you because you've done way too many great things to mention them out loud. So let's just take a moment and back up to share a little bit of background information about how Jasmine came to be at Kilroy. So Jasmine is a SF Bay Area native, something that I was really excited to read. She's always had a passion for sustainability. And as a young person, she spent a lot of her free time volunteering with organizations like Habitat for Humanity and Grid Alternatives, where she led teams of volunteers installing solar on low-income housing. And Jasmine was kind of on a fast track to sustainability. Just a few months after graduating college, she was nominated to the board of directors for USGBCLA as an emerging professional, where she was able to gain valuable knowledge and learn from her distinguished board peers, and also provide a new perspective to advance sustainability across Kilroy's various market sectors. As a sustainability and corporate social responsibility manager at Kilroy, Jasmine heads up tracking and managing of Scope 3 carbon emissions on Kilroy's development projects. She supports Kilroy Realty property management teams and tenants in their efforts to occupy and operate high-performing, environmentally sustainable buildings. In addition to managing building certificates within the portfolio, she supports the company's corporate social responsibility initiatives. So thank you, Jasmine, for sitting tight while I read that bio, and thank you. Apologies for having skipped in the first place.
Thanks, Ryan.
We're going to switch gears now and continue to our next presenter. Next, we have Karen Klepak with Southern California Edison. And Karen, we won't forget your bio, so I'm going to jump right into it. Karen's the Senior Manager of Building Electrification at SCE, where she drives for carbon neutrality by 2045 to reduce the threat of climate change. In her current role, she works on new construction strategy that results in the design and construction of healthy homes and buildings in California. Prior to being at Southern California Edison, Karen worked in energy efficiency at SoCalGas and as a sustainability consultant at CTG. She also serves on the USGBC Orange County Market Leader Advisory Board and the USGBC Lead for Cities and Communities Working Group, where she co-chairs an energy and emissions subgroup. Karen holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering and a Master's in Business Administration with an emphasis on organizational leadership. So with that, Karen, please take it away and let me know how to advance your slides.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So in addition to being the Senior Manager of Building Electrification and Codes and Standards at Southern California Edison, I'm also the Director of Communications on our EcoIQ Employee Resource Group. We have 12 employee resource groups at Southern California Edison, and they range from they cover different ethnicities, cultures, sexual orientations, gender identity, and then we even have an employee resource group for those that provide care at home for elders and for their kids, which is very relevant these days. Probably gained a lot more members in that one recently. But our vision for EcoIQ is to be the driving force in developing and maintaining a culture of environmental responsibility among SCE employees, not only at work, but also at home and in the community. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows our 2020 goals. And if you start at the bottom, there's the foundation where we have, we want to fill up our board positions that we have, and then also increase participation. So we have probably 450 or so members of EcoIQ at Edison. By no means are all those people active. Many are just on the email distribution, which is fine, and participate in our webinars, which is fantastic. But we really try to drive that employee engagement. And then we also have as a goal for this year to update our SharePoint and just general tools for people to get involved in EcoIQ. So easy ways to get information for people. And then within our goals, we have 3 buckets. So there's workforce, where we put on webinars and employee fairs when we're all together and drive employee engagement that way. We also have within the workplace, we will focus on a corporate sustainability project at Edison that we all can volunteer on. And then marketplace, getting involved in the community and hosting volunteer events, which has obviously also been impacted by COVID, but I will get into that in a little bit. You can go ahead to the next slide. So this is how we're set up. We have an executive sponsor who's Steve Powell. We also have as an advisor, Holly Hill and Amy Wong. Many of you know Holly from her involvement with USGBC. She works in sustainability at Edison, so she serves as an advisor, and she really helps to make that connection between the board members who work in all different groups across Edison, but also the work that's going on at Edison and EIX. We have a president and a vice president, and then we have several directors, as you see there. The director of internal affairs kind of handles those internal projects, the sustainability projects that I mentioned. We have a director of finance who handles the money. I'm currently serving as the director of communication, And I will put out email distributions to all of our members. And then you'll also see on the left there, I had started some social media engagement this year. So I created a LinkedIn group and then also a Twitter handle, and they're both SCE_EcoIQ. So that's another way that employees can get engaged and communicate with each other. And then we have a director of operations who works on our SharePoint and making it easy to convey information around. And then our director of external affairs focuses on the volunteer events, which used to be external, and now we're focusing a little bit more on what people can do in their communities. You can go to the next slide. So EcoIQ has taken a very strong stance on Black Lives Matter, which is, become a major headline lately, but certainly is definitely not anything new. And we've taken this on as a theme for EcoIQ going forward. So we want this to not just be one event of something, an educational thing that we put on, but it will be a recurring theme throughout everything that we do in EcoIQ. We have a webinar that we're organizing coming up that will be chaired by Carla Peterman, who's one of our senior vice presidents, and then also a professor from UCI who is an expert in environmental justice and public policy. And that webinar will be for our EcoIQ members to not only learn about environmental justice and these diesel death zones that we have right in our own service territory, but also uncover some ways that they can get involved and individual actions that they can take. And then on the right, in the workplace, one of our major initiatives for this year was the Waste Not campaign. And that was a repository where we can take office supplies and things that might be thrown away or otherwise disposed of, and we can recycle them not only internally within the group, because one, it doesn't make sense if we have one group throwing away a bunch of binders and then the group right next to them ordering a bunch of binders. So this is a way that we can pull all of our collective resources together and redistribute them and reuse them. And we also would do donations of this stuff as well. And this has obviously been very impacted by COVID because not only is nobody in the office, but also nobody's taking donations. So we've changed track a little bit on that. And what we've done is, as people are buying office equipment for their home office equipment, we have identified places where they can buy like sit stands that have been refurbished. There's a place that we found in Irwindale near our offices that has gotten a bunch of chairs and sit stands from businesses that have closed, and you can then buy them. So it's much better than buying something new on Amazon. So that's a way that we're working around that. And I think that may be my last slide. Yes.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate
Thank you.
And impressive to see the quick response to COVID. Wonderful to see. All right, so I'm really excited to introduce this next speaker because I've heard so much about her great programs. Joining us on behalf of UCLA is Nurit Katz. As UCLA's first Chief Sustainability Officer, Nurit is working to foster partnerships among academic, research, and operational departments to facilitate creating a world-class living laboratory for sustainability at UCLA. Nurit has also served as Executive Officer for UCLA Facilities Management for 5 years. Nurit is an instructor for UCLA Extension Sustainability Certificate Program, and Nurit also holds an MBA from the UCLA Anderson School of Management, a Master's in Public Policy from the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs, and a BA in Environmental Education from Humboldt State University. All right, Nurit, I'm going to advance your slides, but just please let me know when you want to move on.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I thought I was sharing screen, but you'll make it really easy. That sounds great. So I'm going to go off video while I do the slideshow, but thought I'd say hi, and I'll be back on video later when we're doing questions. So yeah, UCLA, as everyone knows, is a large public university, so we're a little different than some of the businesses that you'll hear from today. But because of our scale, we end up finding that it's really helpful to share best practices and stay connected to corporations and other large organizations because we have a lot of common challenges in sustainability. So we are like almost like a small city, daily population of 80,000 people. So our efforts, started decades ago before we were calling it sustainability in terms of energy efficiency or building our cogen. But we formalized these efforts in 2005 with the UCLA Sustainability Committee, which is sort of our green team. And it was a formal charter from the chancellor setting forth the mission of this committee, which is basically to create a culture of sustainability and integrate our education, research, and operations. So we have a lot of people engaged in different subcommittees and task forces, but the main committee meets bi-monthly. And then we started an executive committee in 2016, which has a lot of our vice chancellors, or what would be sort of like the CFO, COO of the company, and that meets quarterly. Next slide. So just kind of laying out the organization. So we have our campus committee and the executive committee and all the different working groups. We have a separate committee for our hospital or health system and working groups under that. And then, we're lucky enough to be part of a 10 campus system, the UC system. I'm sure you know many of our other campuses, Berkeley and Irvine and others. Santa Cruz, which unfortunately is really impacted by fires right now and evacuated. So keep your thoughts with our NorCal friends. But so we collaborate a lot across the system. So kind of like for a corporation that has a lot of different subsidiaries or smaller companies, but an overarching sustainability plan. So ours is like that. Most of our big targets are set at the UC level. And we have a system-wide steering group that approves that policy that meets once or twice a year. And then we have working groups that talk to each other constantly via Zoom. We have monthly calls for every topic you can think of: energy, water, waste, etc. A lot of strong targets in all of those areas. You can check out our websites. I won't give you like a whole summary on that, but some of the big ones are like carbon neutrality by 2025, and we have targets in pretty much every operational area. Next slide. So yes, here they are on the slide. Sorry, I forgot. I thought this one was going to come first and then it wasn't there. So you can see the different areas covered by the policy. So many of these areas are very similar to what you would deal with as a company: energy, green buildings, climate, transportation, etc. Next slide. So some of our highlights from this year included working with our partner, LADWP. So we partner with a lot of folks on the call, or other panelists. We created a new renewable rate agreement that we're now pulling 10 megawatts of offsite solar, which for us is big. We're also we will be participating in LADWP's feed-in tariff program to do on-site solar as well. One of our biggest areas of success that I think can be a model or best practice for a lot of organizations is how we've been able to drive people out of their cars. So LA is famous for everyone driving by themselves, but we've been able to get to about half our staff and only a quarter of our students driving by themselves, and everyone else going by van pool, carpool, bicycling, walking, etc. So our employee drive alone rate, when you take out the students, is now down to 47.9%. LA County, by contrast, is like 70-something%. We also achieved a gold level for Bicycle Friendly University, which puts us in the top nationally, and not easy to achieve with sort of the surrounding challenges of Wilshire and Sunset and being not in the most bikeable part of Los Angeles, but we've really committed to a lot of infrastructure and lanes, et cetera, on campus. We've also made some great progress on the food side. We surpassed the 20% sustainable food procurement goal and have now about half of our residential restaurants that are certified in some form of sustainability, including the latest, which was a 3-star green restaurant. And on the green building side, we are now at 52 green buildings, perfect for the topic of this conference today. So we have 52 LEED certifications, of which there are 10 silver, 26 gold, and now 16 platinum, which we are proud of. We are also moving forward on addressing single-use plastics. So a lot going on, really excited and enjoying hearing from everybody what they're working on, and look forward to more of a dialogue in a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurit. We have one panelist, last but not least, my close colleague at LADWP. Her name is Jenny Sang. And Jenny has over 15 years of architecture and project management experience, specializing in complex, multi-user, multidiscipline municipal facilities and utility yards. Her experience spans green building strategy, LEED certification management, Energy Star benchmarking, energy and water efficient design, and corporate sustainability. She's also worked in all phases of design and construction, from programming through contract administration. As a LADWP Green Team Council member, she collaborates with her peers to develop innovative and appropriate sustainable solutions to meet department goals and mandates. All right, take it away, Jenny.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share with all of you today about LADWP Green Team. So the LADWP Green Teams actually started back in 2013 by only 4 LADWP employees. They were just employees that share common interests and goal, and then they'll meet once a month to discuss environmental impact and current events. Our Green Team mission is to really develop and encourage sustainable policy and practice across all systems within LADWP. As of today, we have about 170 employees become Green Team members. And our meeting fluctuate between 30 to 50 people. We first started out as an in-person meeting, and we meet once a month at LADWP headquarters. But we receive a lot of comments from our outside facility employees that they would love to join. So later on, we started to conduct our meeting in both in person and also through WebEx. Next slide. So within LADWP organizations, we are the Green Team situate under the Office of Sustainability under the leadership of Ms. Nancy Sevely, our Chief Sustainability Officer. We also have environmental specialists, employee who with roughly equivalent to 0.25 FTEs who provide support to the Green Team. But I want to emphasize that all our members are all volunteers. Yeah, so they all volunteer their times to become part of the Green Teams. Next, please. So to better structure the LADWP Green Team, about 2 years ago, we established the Green Team Council. So all the council members are also volunteers, and I'm one of the members, council members of the Green Team. We meet bi-weekly to plan upcoming meetings and events. And we actually don't have an annual budget. So we rely on a lot of sponsorships from other groups and also from Office of Sustainability as well. Our volunteers event can range from supporting department events during normal business hours or events that held outside business hours as well. One of the sample event we volunteer is the annual California Clean Air Day. Last year, our Green Team members provide educational information and encourage our employees to take pledges. And we also organize a tree planting event. Another event that I wanted to mention about is, as you see the picture on the slide, this is one of the events that I look forward to every year. That's our year-end Green Team gathering and celebration. It's really an event for all our members to get together, to network, and to share everyone their sustainable success stories. And Nancy, we always enjoy Nancy taking out her busy time to join us every year to show her support and appreciation to our members for their volunteer efforts. Next slide, please. Our Green Team also take on a lot of leaderships in LADWP internal initiatives. We help launch the new recycling education campaign to help improve our employee recycling habits. We held a design workshop and within one of our meetings to design a signage that called Let's Recycle Right signage, which you see at the bottom right corner of the slide. And the idea is You know, we want to make sure that everybody put the right things at the right bins. And then our building repair folks help put all these signage nearby all the recycle bins and trash bins. And then another initiatives that we helped launch was the printless policy. And the idea of that policy is we want to encourage and remind employees to share print copies or distribute electronic copies. Use Post-it note instead of a full sheet of cover letter. Avoid neon and fluorescent paper, and then print on 30% post-consumer paper, and also recycling mixed paper. So overall, LADWP, we support the department's sustainable goals, but we are also a great internal network hub and educational resources for our employees. That's pretty it. Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Let me end this screen share just one moment while we transition back to full video. One more second here. Okay. And if our panelists could come off of mute so that we can see your bright and shining faces and we can get the discussion section kicked off here. I want to thank you again for sharing all that great information. It's kind of inspiring to see all those slides in succession because our goals, though we have very different entities that we're working to support, our goals are very similar. We're all kind of in alignment and driving towards the same future. So it's nice to be reminded that we're all pushing in that same direction. I do want to check in with Becky really quick because we spoke at you all for so long, and one of the weird parts of these virtual sessions is that we don't have the dialogue opportunities that we would have in a conference room. So Becky, are you able to relay any of the questions from Hope, or do we have any comments that have come through?
I would be happy to. So far, we are getting a lot of praise, but no questions. So if anybody has questions, feel free to throw them into the chat box and I will shout them out. But just know you guys are doing fabulous and the crowd is loving you.
Okay, well, while folks are chewing on questions and digesting all those slides that they just saw, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. And panelists, I've prepared some discussion questions for our group that I hope can highlight your great work and also educate folks who are watching through the HOVA platform. And when I say educate the audience, I'm kind of just talking about myself. As you all know, I'm very new in my role at LADWP on the corporate sustainability team. And one of my duties is to manage the corporate sustainability program's LADWP Green Team. So these discussion questions are actually just me as a new employee, really trying to better understand how best to engage our folks and guide our leaders that we have working on our Green Team Council and also our regular members of the Green Team. So thanks for indulging me as I'm completely self-serving with these questions. I'm going to be taking copious notes, and I hope that our audience members are able to learn a thing or two as well. So the first question that I've got is for Nurit and Jasmine. I'm curious, Nurit, we'll start with you first. How does your Green Team make the business case for sustainability? You rattled off so many giant goals. I heard 15 or 52 LEED buildings and also an initiative to try to get solar on site. With education being the product that you all deliver, how do you keep sustainability at top of mind and keep pushing the envelope there?
Yeah, so it is challenging. Having formal policies and targets really helps. So if you're just starting out in your organization, you know, pushing to establish concrete goals, or if your organization isn't ready for goals, concrete metrics that you're tracking is a really good place to start, because once you have that accountability, it is easier to push initiatives. But that said, we are, as a public institution, now in a severe budget crisis. We do still have to be conscious of ROI and think about the business case. So a lot of our early efforts were prioritizing those types of initiatives that had a good return. And that can be a really good place for your organization to start if you are just getting started, which is areas like energy efficiency, where you might be able to get a payback in like 3 months or a year. You know, there's a lot of kind of low-hanging fruit that can be really fast, and then you can build some goodwill that way, or maybe even, you know, set aside savings in a revolving fund or some sort of structure that can then support some of the initiatives that maybe are a longer return or not as strong on the business case.
Thank you, that is excellent advice. And I wanted to pose the same question to Jasmine. Jasmine, how do you all handle that at Kilroy?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Nurit was saying about having put in place policies, procedures, best practices, standard operating procedures really helps to shape your program, and then you can build off of them, off of those policies as your program develops over the years, as you start getting into various reporting entities and they're asking you, hey, do you guys do this? And you're like, oh, okay, like let's start building up those programs as well. But as far as the other part of the business case and return on investment, I mean, we're all in the business of making money, at least more private sector. And so we do look at those quicker returns, 1 to 3 years. Lighting retrofits are great and have a large impact, especially on large commercial developments. And then also our tenants. It's part of the demand. Sorry. And so there's always a case, and a business case for that sense is people being passionate about sustainability in the spaces that they're in and making sure they're healthy, interactive, positive spaces. So.
Thank you. Thank you
Can
for
I
sharing.
add one thing to that, Ryan?
Certainly, and there are other panelists too. If folks want to piggyback on this, please do.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I think the operational savings that we both just addressed are often where people start, but it's important to remember that the business case for sustainability goes just beyond cost savings. And as a private company, you can think about things like employee retention or, you know, appealing to customers in that kind of niche and, you know, kind of your brand value. There's a lot of other areas to the business case beyond just the operational savings, although that can be a good place to start.
Thank you. Other panelists, do we have anyone who wants to contribute, or perhaps Becky, are there other questions that have come through?
Yeah, there is a question around engagement. So we have a question around how do you engage fellow staff in a green team if it's not mandatory, and how do you go beyond corporate goals and into living and breathing sustainability as a company?
It's a great question. Can I direct that one to both John and Jenny, and we can start with John for Lyft?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way we set up our employee resource group, we just set up like any other employee resource group, and there's just a list of them. What Lyft does, which I think is really clever, is one of the things you're evaluated on, you know, at the annual review or whatever, is your engagement with the company. And so almost everyone is involved in at least one of the employee resource groups. And we just happen to have a lot of folks who are really, really interested in sustainability. It is, you know, I think it's becoming a cool topic. When I started in the industry, I don't think it was, but now I think it's kind of a cool thing that people want to. And then I like this concept that Lyft has of grading people on their involvement within the culture of the company. I think that can really help to kind of nudge people into a group.
Thank you. And Jenny, I know a little bit about LADWP's initiatives, but you've kind of been presiding over them as a Green Team Council member for a really long time. So please share. I'm really excited to hear how you all started reaching out more broadly to LADWP employees.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so DWP, the way we kind of introduce Green Team to our employee is through our new employee orientations. We have Green Team members actually do presentation at our new employee orientation. And at the same time, we educate our employees how important it is to have a strong, sustainable practice within our workplace. And then we also introduce to them the Green Team members, how we meet once a month, and also our website. So we have an internal DWP website that we share with our employees, all the resources, all the presentation, meeting agendas, so they will be able to have that access as well. The other things, that's more for new employees. So for our existing employees, currently we're working on a educational program. We are hoping to create some sort of educational video for our existing employees, which sometimes a lot of the employees do monthly safety meetings or some sort of division meetings. And we hope to share with them an educational, a sustainable update about our green teams and what we do through their monthly or whatever whatever often they meet. Yeah, so that's in our work in progress. So education is play a big role in our green team.
Thank you. Thank you. And John, I want to point out that that is totally new to me. In keeping with me using this as a selfish professional development opportunity, I had not heard of a company that does rate its employees annually as part of their review on how deeply they're engaged. That sounds like a great opportunity for you all to increase sustainability participation.
Yeah, and it's just one aspect, obviously, of the review, but it does get people more interactive with all the different things. So I think it's something to consider.
Sure. Okay. And Becky, are there any other questions on your side?
There sure are. They're coming through now. Here's a great one. How can green teams be used as a forum to discuss justice issues?
Sounds like Karen might be the most appropriate party considering the Black Lives Matter support you voiced through.
Yeah, we saw a really critical way that we could get involved in the movement, and it was a way that EcoIQ was uniquely poised. So we do have an African American employee resource group in Edison, and rather than tap them to educate us, what we wanted to do is figure out how we could uniquely contribute. So that's why we reached out to environmental justice leaders in our community to educate us and also identify ways that we can get involved. So, in vehicle emissions, a lot of the disadvantaged communities, I think Edison has almost half of the disadvantaged communities in all of California in our service territory. So there's a lot that we can do to help to mitigate that, driving an electric vehicle, because a lot of these communities are at the intersection of freeways and, near the port where there's shipping and trucking and all those types of things. So we really get engaged with each other to look for ways that we can change our own daily behaviors to help mitigate some of that air pollution.
That's great. It's nice to hear that you all took initiative there. And, having that dialogue between the employee resource group sounds like a really good discussion, a way to bring people into the sustainability fold, perhaps folks who might not have decided to engage with that employee resource group before. So it's a great idea. Any other folks want to chime in on that question before we proceed? Okay, seeing none. And Becky, do we have more, or should I go back to my selfish questions?
I just chime in a tiny bit in that, I think the most important thing is just do it, talk about it. We often focus on the environmental side of sustainability because it's so easy to measure, gallons of water, and the social side of sustainability, including equity issues and justice issues, can get overlooked sometimes by green teams. So be the one to bring it up, engage in those dialogues. There are people who specialize in facilitating the dialogues. If you don't feel comfortable doing that on your own, you can reach out. But I think the biggest thing is just do it, because sustainability cannot be successful without that E of equity.
I agree with that. Yeah, because I think that's when the Green Team Council for our Green Team plays in a big role, because we meet bi-weekly, and then we actually take on whatever employee have an interest on a certain topics, and then we try to make it into our monthly meetings. And that's how we want to get our Green Team member to be more engaged. We want to provide the resource that they're looking for.
Yeah, that responsiveness is so important, making sure that you're not just sharing canned or, corporate canned or whatever you want to call them, goals reliably and consistently, that if someone has a good idea or if there's a current event, that gets addressed as well. Thank you. Becky, do we have any more on your side? I think you were about to share one.
We wanted somebody wanted you to speak a little bit more about how distributive justice and how sustainability can have a positive impact.
Karen, can I return to you? Is that a term you're familiar with?
I apologize. My phone is falling apart. We can't use Zoom at Edison, and so I'm trying to balance my cell phone. It's falling apart on me. What was the question?
The question is, can you speak about distributive justice and how sustainability can have a positive impact?
Distributive justice. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Would that be, can you expound on that?
This is new terminology for me as well.
Yes, I was not familiar with the term. Wendell, do you want to elaborate on your question so that we can get a little more in depth? And until then, why don't you go back into one of your discussion questions, Ryan?
Okay, I do have one, and thank you, Wendell, for elaborating. I think it's a good topic that we should return to. I want to save time for it. But back to back to the selfish questions. For my professional development as a new Green Team coordinator, I'm wondering about volunteer opportunities. And I want to start with Jasmine and just hear about Kilroy. And then I think everyone has some element of this, so it'd be great to hear others chime in. Jasmine, at Kilroy, what role does volunteerism play for your green team, and how do you find and seek out volunteer partnerships that are kind of appropriate for the services that you all can offer?
Yeah, definitely. I am a little bit newer to the Kilroy team, so I haven't personally been able to participate in a lot of volunteer activities yet, and then COVID came along. But heavily involved, very heavy in the social aspect, having all departments engaged in volunteer activities, having various partnerships that also have volunteer opportunities. USGBC always has various events that we're aware of, and just sharing that knowledge. Pretty much any organization that we choose to be part of, but it's very important because, like previously mentioned, sustainability goes so much farther than recycling or saving energy. It needs to be intersectional, and a lot of our volunteer opportunities can reach underserved communities and just create more awareness. So that's something that is really important to Kilroy, and there's a plethora.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I could share a little on volunteerism too, because as I had mentioned, one of our goals at our EcoIQ group is community volunteer events, and we've done solar installs with Grid Alternatives and trail restorations up at Shaver Lake and tree plantings and things like that. But obviously all of that has been put on hold now. And we had as one of our goals to do 4 community volunteer events this year. And since we can no longer do that, we shifted gears, and instead we said, okay, let's try to get all of our members, between all of us, to do at least 240 hours of volunteerism. And that can be planting a garden, something that doesn't require you to go out and be with a group. It might be picking up trash in your neighborhood. It might be volunteering at your local food bank. And Edison has a really great platform and this is all the time, where you can log your volunteer hours in our system. And for each employee in Edison, for every 40 hours that you volunteer, Edison will donate $100 to the nonprofit of your choice, up to $400 per year. So we're leveraging that platform to be able to track our volunteer hours that our members are doing.
That speaks to what Nuri and Jasmine shared earlier, is having that policy structure to begin with, and there you are making the best of it.
Actually, LEDWP also has our green team. The way we engage employees, we actually had a annual photo contest, and we asked LEDWP employees to submit photos of their sustainable practice that they done outside of the office or even in the office. And then we have a contest, and usually we get a lot of submissions, and the winner will recognize it in our newsletters. And also we have a little LED screen in our elevators, and that information get posted on the elevators. So it's been a great, one of the mini events that we got a lot of engagement with.
Thank you. Any others on volunteerism before we quickly return to the distributive justice concept, and then wrapping up shortly as well? Any other comments on volunteerism? Okay. I do see a couple of chats from Wendell, but I want to make sure that I've seen them all. Becky, are you seeing the same note that I saw about distributive justice being about?
I sure am. Would you like me to read it out?
Please, it's easier for you to see it than it is for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. So distributive justice concerns the just allocation of social resources, fairness in the distribution of goods, and the ability to acquire goods. Can sustainability have a positive impact in this area?
Any thoughts from our panelists? We're also different in what we provide folks, and we have different customer base or ratepayer base. I'm so curious as to how we're approaching this.
Yeah, or Jasmine, you wanna go?
Okay, John.
Just really quick, the interesting thing about rideshare and about Lyft is that in California, I think it's 71% of our drivers identify as being from a minority group, and 33% speak a different language, a language other than English at home. And so just by the nature of our business, we are very, very involved in communities of color and underserved communities. And so when we are able to bring clean vehicles and electric vehicles onto the platform, those vehicles are naturally being distributed, which I think is what Wendell's getting at. They're being distributed to these neighborhoods where there are a few underserved amount of clean vehicles. You know, the average user of the California rebate makes $170,000 a year, and most of them buy a Tesla. And so that's one demographic, but rideshare drivers encompass quite a bit of a large one. And then, yeah, just about the laws and regulations, we have rules where drivers they don't see where the vehicle destination and pickup are before they take a ride. And so what that does is that increases the amount of activity in lower income neighborhoods where, not to rag on taxis, but taxis could see could pick and choose whom to pick up and then tell people they wouldn't go to a certain neighborhood. So we're by no means perfect, but we put in different things to try to level the playing field on distributed access to transportation and distributed access to clean transportation.
Thank you, John. I'm going to follow up really quickly, even though we're running short on time. I just think it's so fascinating that you do share those stats at Lyft, and you all are also in charge of the 100% EV by 2030 goal. Is Lyft looking kind of in that direction of being able to bring chargers to neighborhoods where they don't currently exist to support their drivers?
Yeah, but indirectly. So the answer is yes. And we are working with utilities. In fact, DWP and SCE, we've had conversations with folks from your team on getting infrastructure to our drivers who in lower income communities where they don't have access to charging. And then we're also partnered with Electrify America and EVgo. And if we say, hey, we're going to bring 200 vehicles to Atlanta, electric vehicles to Atlanta, then EVgo and Electrify America will build up the infrastructure in the places our drivers live, which tend to be communities of color. So yes to that one in two different ways.
Thank you so much. And unless our panelists have any other very pressing questions, I do want to wrap our session because there's a part 2 to the gathering of the green teams. But do our panelists have any final thoughts on the distributive justice concept or any of the other topics? Okay, I am seeing none. Before we wrap up, I just want to take one more moment. I think that considering this is a virtual session, this was so collaborative. So I first want to thank the folks in the WOBA platform who were able to submit questions. We actually learned something new. I think all of us learned a term, so thank you, Wendell, for bringing that to the fore. And I want to take a moment to also thank USGBC LA and our panelists, of course, once more. I personally have been really inspired to hear how all of our different organizations are taking different and creative approaches to greening. And I don't think that we need reminding because we are all sitting here on Zoom, but these are super trying times, and the sustainability work that we're doing, we're kind of asked to do that differently. We're asked to do more with less, and we're asked to be super positive in light of all the challenges. And I just think it's really encouraging to see that everyone's still kind of pushing forward, everyone's still being very creative in their approach, and it gives me a lot of confidence that our sustainability goals are not going to be sidelined and will basically push forward despite COVID. So thank you, panelists, for being that voice of optimism and reminding me of that. And I hear Nurit. Nurit, did you have something to add?
Just that I wanted to mention, if people had questions that they didn't get to, we have a lot of resources at UCLA. You can reach me at sustainability@ucla.edu and feel free to reach out. Or we have a professional certificate program in sustainability and a number of alums in these kinds of roles, and happy to chat about any of that if folks want to reach out. So thank you so much for organizing, Ryan. This was a great dialogue.
Thank you. That's a great idea that you were able to offer up contact information. If you don't mind using the chat function to share that, I think a lot of folks who were able to join on Zoom would appreciate the email address and the opportunity to connect. And for other panelists as well, if there's a general line for sustainability or a personal email that you can be contacted for further questions, we'd appreciate that too. Okay, so this concludes session 1 of our gathering of the green teams. I'm really encouraged that we had such good attendance and we had such all-star panelists. Please stick with us though, because we're going to transition to a second session. The second session is titled How to Leverage Green Teams for Environmental, Social, and Governance Metrics. And this is a different topic. There'll be a new moderator and different panelists, but we're still going to stay on the same theme, which is how green teams can support broader sustainability goals and employee engagement. So please navigate back to the agenda. If you can't find it, you can just type in mgbce.online in your URL bar, and you'll be able to navigate down to the 2:30 Gathering of the Green Teams Part 2 session. So thank you so much for joining us. I think this is a really successful first virtual and first combined Gathering of the Green Teams. And thanks again to USGBC for bringing us into the fold.
Thank you.